Well, hello friends, we are out in the garden and we are about to embark on a brand new project that I've been having in the works for at least 1 year, but I've been thinking about it for a couple years. So we're over at my mom's house, and as you're gonna hear, it's a little breezy today, and we're also right beside the front, kind of the road, so you could hear kind of those multiple noises. But this is a problem area that I've talked about and thought about for quite a while. And I started this last year in preparation of knowing what I was gonna do this year. So you can see somewhat the area behind me. This is a full sun, kind of east facing area that really gets the brunt of heat, wind during the summer. It has beautiful soil, rich Iowa black loamy soil, but it can dry out quite a bit sometimes in the summer as we get dry conditions. So we're gonna go through all the steps of what I'm doing to get this area ready. Today, what I'm working on is getting this bed prepped for all the planting we're gonna do in the next video. I have a lot of perennials to put in here, and all of them I'm picking for very specific reasons. We're gonna go over that, but today's a little about the plan, the design, the layout, also a couple structures I'm gonna put in here for some interest and kind of for seating benches also. And really just how I get a bed ready, because each of us goes at gardening differently. And what I want you to know, I have worked in various aspects of the landscape industry in the past. And when it comes to my own yard, some of them I really plan out. This one I did plan out, but sometimes I adjust it as I go. I am a visual person, so I can measure, have everything to scale, but still sometimes when I get into a project like this, I adjust as I go for what I need. And that's what you're gonna come along with me and see. I like to make sure visually it's gonna make sense, and sometimes right as I'm planting things or laying things out, that's how I really see it. So you're gonna go through all those steps with me, but I first wanna show you a tour of the area we're doing and why we're doing it. So we're in what I always call the east lawn at my mom's farm, which is just about 1/8 of a mile from my house. A few years ago, I planted 8 celebration maples, which I am creating somewhat of an alley down to the orchard beyond, but they always stay nice and upright. So they're gonna have some shade canopy, but it won't actually shade out this bed. And this is what we're working on. So I'm gonna show you the ugly right away. So with some of the electrical and solar mom has, we have these big boxes here. So that's number one. It became obviously it's an eyesore that we don't love, but it's something you have to have. So we're gonna work around it as needed, along with the cable that runs down to support the actual line of electricity coming in from across the road. So what we have is a bed that I actually got ready last year. So I had a sod cutter last summer, and I decided while I had it, I was gonna make use and remove as much of this sod as I could. So this bed is somewhat prepared, but I do wanna edge it more today. But right in front of these boxes, let's kind of talk about that. Now, obviously, you have to have a little bit of clearance, and that's gonna go for the ordinances in your local area, so always check. Also, I know all my locates. You can see they're marked right in front of me with flags. I know where, I'm not gonna dig that deep, but it's still good to know where things are and not get close to them as needed. Last year, I think it was last year, yeah, I planted some limelight hydrangeas. Now, this is gonna be where it sounds a little odd. I'm not necessarily planning for these to be here forever, but they're gonna be some quick cover for this area. In front of them is a fringe tree. I love fringe trees. It's gonna be in its second full year. Last year, I planted it 2 years ago in a fall. So last year was its first full year. This will be its second full year. It blooms beautifully, and eventually it's gonna be kind of a nice ornamental, 15-foot tall maybe, kind of with a little bit of a canopy around it. So that will eventually more kind of cover this area, especially during the growing season. And eventually those limelights might need to either be cut back or removed completely, but I want those in there just because they were pretty low cost to have something that's gonna grow tall quickly. And that's one of the ways that I'm saying it could adjust in the future. Those limelights are gonna be for the now, and you'll see my plan. What I did was I drew it out in much more of a naturalistic style. So I've been embracing perennials that are drought tolerant, that are gonna do well in hot conditions in the summer, and once established, do not need watering. That to me is key. So it's just like I did at my house around the pathway, and what I'm gonna do more of around the new pathway this year. I want plants that will take care of themselves in the future, and in the spring can be chopped and dropped. Run a mower over them when the temperature is right, let all that mulch back into the soil, and it's self-composting over time. That to me is the beautiful way to do perennial beds. So the real reason for this bed is Mom wanted something that looked a little bit more present up towards the house. So with the house behind us, she can actually look out onto this side, and this is where a lot of her windows are looking, and there's not usually much that she can look at. So she wanted something that was gonna give some color, some year-round interest possibly, and really fill in this area. So when I took the sod out, I left enough room knowing that these Techni arborvitae are definitely going to grow. We want them to grow, and they're going to be growing into the bed somewhat. And then you can see I took it out quite wide so I could have a nice big planting area. Now what I want to do today is edge the area a little bit more crisp and clean and leave a little bit of a ditch like I like to do sometimes. And then what I want to do is place the two kind of architectural salvage stone pieces that I'll show you, and they're going to act as kind of benches and just visual interest too. And then what we're going to do in the next video is plant everything around them. So you can see it's a nice big area. It's anchored by a couple ornamental evergreens that I planted quite a few years ago that are starting to really take off. And we do already have in here some Caradonna salvia because last year Mom wanted some and ended up buying it and didn't know where to put it. And I said, why don't you just stick it in here for now? And I just drew the plan around it. So we're gonna add a lot more Caradonna salvia because I planted this, I think, or she did in August last year. And look already in less than a year, in a few months, how much it's really filling in. So that's gonna be kind of the quick concept for what's going on in this area. So let's just start by edging and then we'll kind of amend the soil and get it ready. So as we get started, I want to know from you, leave me questions, because if what I don't cover in this video, hopefully I can in the future in other videos. What do you want to know about starting a new bed? What things have I maybe not covered that you're going to say, wait, how do you decide this or that? What I do want to say is, I always start with knowing this is a full sun area. This is going to get over 6 hours of sun a day. It's usually around 8 at least hours of hot sun every day in the summer. That's my first thing. I also know this is a well-draining area. This does not hold water. Water does not sit here. So I'm picking plants accordingly, knowing it is going to be mostly typical soil. It's a neutral soil. It's not acidic. It doesn't have anything kind of other than this beautiful, black, rich, loamy soil, which if you don't know, I am very lucky to have beautiful soil, and it can hold on to moisture really well, but it drains really well too. So what I want to start by doing is I took the measurements off of just more how big I wanted this bed to be. I didn't pick the plants first, I picked the size of the bed first. But what I did take into account was knowing those evergreens are going to grow, like I said, and knowing how far in they were going to come and cover eventually. That's really important to know the overall size of anything you're planting, because if you just stick a plant in, it might be too close to something else once it gets to maturity. So what I'm going to start by doing is taking my half moon edger. You know I like these. This is elbow grease work. This is just hard work, but it really can make it have a nice clean edge, as you know I like. And what that's going to allow me to do is keep a ditch that will harden off and not let the grass grow in right away. Usually this is something I only have to keep up and maintenance every couple years, maybe every 3 years even, depending. So I'm going to start doing it just so you can see the overall shape I'm going to achieve. And then we'll talk about why I'm doing that. What I want you to see here is that I'm creating about a 4-inch deep trench. Now there's a lot of questions that usually come up with this when I do this. One is, doesn't the mower just fall into this trench? It depends what kind of mower you have. So obviously for larger yards, we have riding lawn mowers, and their decks, the ones we have, sit out past the wheels. So we don't have to bring the wheel into this trench or on this line. The deck is able to get here and slightly float over without those wheels coming close. That's number one. Number two, you have to assess for your own yard what's going to work. Why I do this, a lot of people worry that aren't you, every time you redo it, bringing out the bed bigger and making it bigger more into the yard? Personally, no, I don't. Over time, if some of this soil or whatever we put up here, mulch, works down into here, that's what in successive years, I clean this back out, open it back up, and leave a nice crisp line along the edge. And that's really all I do. Now, if I ever want to, you can take it out as big as you want in the future too. But really what I'm doing here is just cleaning up the edge, creating this trench all along down my bed. So I've been working my way back up the line, and what you can see is I take out big chunks of sod, but that doesn't mean I'm just throwing them out. What I'm doing is, we usually save any of this grass that we can, Mom and I, and we put in any bare spots we have. So I will take off as much soil from this as I can, just to keep it in the bed. And then I will put this ready to go somewhere else in the gator behind me. Now, if it's weeds, obviously I discard that. But really, this is something, so when I clean up this line now in years to come, I'm not taking out big chunks like this. I'm just cleaning back this 4-inch trench. And what I like to do is let air harden this off. So even after we're done, I put mulch on the bed. I like to leave this side exposed, that's 4 inches deep, so it just hardens off and the grass doesn't jump over. And you've seen, if you followed me, you've seen that this works year after year and it does really well. So I'm just gonna finish taking the little bits of grass if I wanna save them, taking the soil off of the ones that don't need so much on it, and they'll be ready to amend. What I'm doing now is actually just gonna put down some compost. Now, I do have my home compost too. I usually save that for some of my established flower beds. When I'm amending a large area like this, I do it for 2 reasons. I'm starting with decent soil, but really what I'm doing here is making sure that I can add in some great organic matter just to help the soil structure overall. So I'm using Espoma's land and seed compost. I've been using this for a few years and I really love how it works into the soil. It creates, I think, a more rich soil. And this is something that you can top dress with every year. You can amend on a large hole if you're planting a tree. You know, oftentimes when I'm planting a tree, I'll amend it with about 50% of the same compost. In this case, I'm just gonna put a thin layer, maybe about 1 inch or 2 over the top of this area, and then work it in with a rototiller, just into the first few inches, maybe 4 to 6 inches of that actual soil layer here. And again, then as I'm planting, that compost is gonna somewhat go into the holes, but also just work down in to all of this bed to make a richer, nicer soil. And that's really what compost does. If you have a bad draining area, add compost. If you have an area that you feel like the soil just doesn't have any nutrition, add compost. You're adding great organic matter. You can never really, over the years, you can add every year, and that's the wonderful part of compost. You can always amend with it, always top dress with it, and it's always gonna help. So I'm gonna put this on, then I'm gonna till it in. The amendments are done, and really I'm about to wrap up, but I am bringing in a couple architectural salvage stones that I've had them for a few years, and I keep having the vision of using them as a bench because they're just about the right size, both height and length, and they just overall work really well. Now, you know me, when it comes to in the garden, I love to use architectural pieces to make it feel like it's maybe an aged garden, an established garden, maybe has a story and a history to tell and there are remnants left. Just like down here going into the orchard, I have 2 salvaged pillars that look like they could have been there or been erected way back. I just like that feeling of things giving structure, giving some type of eye. We have such a large yard when you live in the country in an open rural area that you need things that start creating more intimate spaces and rooms. And all these things that I put around are very well, I think about them for a long time before I do it, but I really want them to feel like it's more established. I'm gonna show you this close up so you can kind of get the idea. I am putting a bed of mulch down, which you can see. And now, honestly, if you wanted something to help this not ever sink or move, you would put in, quite a bit of gravel underneath it, both to help level it, but also give it a bed that it wouldn't move as much in. I don't want this to be that permanent, so I'm putting mulch under because this whole bed is gonna get mulched when it's done. But what I wanna show you is this red sandstone piece. Now, I brought it over with a skid loader because it's quite heavy, obviously, and I cannot lift it by myself. But this is a piece that would have been on a big, grand, old building at one time, and when it was torn down, it was salvaged. I happened to find it locally, and I was really excited, so I have 2 of these that are matching. And what you can see is it's, from the front, very decorative. I mean, look at all that carved sandstone. You can't replicate this type of stuff. Now, the back of it isn't that exciting. It's okay, but the front is obviously, and I love the patina that's on it. I love how there's lichen on it, kind of some moss and algae. I love all of that, and I want it just to live on it. But now, if I wanted to, I could get a capstone to put on top of it, so it created more of a formal bench. I don't think I'm gonna do that because it's flat by itself. I think it's pretty perfect. So at the moment, I'm gonna use it as is, but I am gonna set it in place by sliding it off of the forks on the skid loader. Now, I'm gonna lift them slightly, bring them in, and then I have a second one that I'll put, kind of mimicking it down the way a little bit. But this is to me the beginning of the structure. Now, the reason I'm putting them in now is when I go to plant this on the next video, I want everything in place so I can plant around it and know exactly where it's going to be. So I'm setting them in now so this whole bed is ready. So friends, this wraps up the first part of this flower bed video. So this is really a brand new bed. It's going to encompass all the things we just did. So the amendments are going to really help establish that really good soil to begin with, along with in successive years we can add more compost. We're also, of course, going to mulch when all the plants are in. Next video, I'm going to set all the plants out and explain what I'm putting where and for what reasons, obviously. This Caradonna salvia is going to stay. But what we also did was establish the 2 benches for this area, which personally are kind of one of my favorites, because what's fun is they have such definition, and all that carving creates shadows that even from far away, it catches and you can really make out that design on them, which I think is really fun. So that's the first piece of the bed. And then all the plantings now are going to complement and flow together and really be beautiful. So check back. Soon there's going to be a video showing all the plantings. And what I love about some of the perennials I've been leaning into in the last few years is they establish super quickly. They become drought tolerant. They fill in within no time, and they give you flowers and blooms and color the first year they're planted. That's key. So share this video around. Come back for more gardening and enjoy a beautiful day.